Hey guys, happy Thursday. Yesterday we listened in live to the AMC Q1 earnings call, and I wanted to get back with you guys and do a quick wrap-up video going over some of the things that I have on the screen, some high-level thoughts, and I spent the day today thinking carefully about what I wanted to talk with you about regarding that call yesterday and thinking about the rest of this year. At a high level, what we're going to talk quickly in this video about is Q1. The results versus what we were expecting. The Q1 cash burn, it was big. The box office for the rest of this year and the comments from AMC that they expected the next 9 months to be free cash flow positive, and the Go plan. I want to touch on that briefly. And then before we get too far ahead of ourselves, slapping each other on the back and high-fiving, a quick reminder at the end of this video that there are still a couple of risk things that me personally, anyways, that I'm watching, and I want to know what is on the upcoming proxy. When is the annual shareholder meeting going to be held that will be voting on the items on that proxy? And there is a bondholder lawsuit with a date coming up in June that I really need to know some resolution on that before I wave the all clear flag and say, it's going green the rest of this year. If you got a couple minutes and you want to hear my thoughts, stick around. We're going to cover these items as quickly as possible. AMC's stock price remained pretty stable after yesterday's earnings, letting me know that pretty much, expectations had been baked in. It was kind of odd, though, to me that no analyst showed up to the call. I don't know why they're giving AMC the cold shoulder. Maybe they got all of their questions answered on IMAX, Cinemark, and Marcus, but it is still noteworthy and odd that none of them had any questions for AMC yesterday. I saw a lot of dunking on AMC and people also upset that the results from Q1 were so poor. If you follow the movie industry, none of this was a surprise, because we all know that the box office in Q1 was slow in 2025, and pretty much every company in the industry suffered during the first quarter. Those of us that follow the industry and listen to all of the CEOs from all of these movie exhibitor companies also know that expectations for the remainder of 2025 are the polar opposite of how Q1 turned out. Expectations versus reality. When I had done my Q1 forecast video, I was expecting, depending on the market share that AMC captured, revenue between $711 million and $812 million. AMC's revenue, even on that for Q1 domestic box office, exceeded my expectations at $862 million. So a little bit of positivity there on a otherwise bad quarter. In terms of net loss, I had forecasted it would be as bad as $250 to $275 million loss for the quarter. Because of that high revenue and some lower costs, the net loss was only $202 million. So I had expected it would be pretty bad. And it was bad, but not as bad as I had feared in terms of net loss for the quarter. Regarding that cash burn, though, that was huge. Let's talk about that for a second. If you remember when Q4 results were announced and everybody was running around slapping each other on the back, high-fiving and popping champagne because Q4 was free cash flow positive, I reminded you guys to listen carefully to what Sean Goodman said, and that in Q1 the piper was going to come calling for those accounts payable, and that we would see a lot of this positive free cash flow in Q4 get turned upside down in Q1. And so I did not do that to instill fear in you, but so that you would have normalized expectations of what was going to come in Q1, and exactly what I expected happened. In fact, it was worse than I expected. In terms of cash burn, I had predicted between 280 and 305 million of cash burn, negative free cash flow, and it came in at 417 million. That is a factor of multiple things, and if you don't understand why it was so bad, look, I see the other videos out there, people saying they're cooking the books, trying to waste money. Look, everything is accounted for on the cash flow statement. It's not a big mystery, guys. Spend a couple minutes and walk through line by line the cash flow statement. You can see exactly what happened here. Revenue was low, so there wasn't a lot of cash coming in, and they had a huge accounts payable from Q4 that needed to be paid off in Q1. And the net result of that was you spent a lot of cash in Q1. That was why they did that cash raise, the equity raise, the November or December dilution, and proactively raised money because they knew that this was coming. So people are going to act shocked and mad and dismayed. But, if you have been paying attention to people who are trying to give you reasonable expectations, you knew in advance that the cash burn in Q1 was going to be very large. And if you're not listening to me, the CFO also told you the same thing. And so did the notes in AMC's Q4 10K. It is fine to be positive, and I like to be positive too, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to be positive to the point of ignoring telling you guys about stuff that might not be so comfortable to hear, because that is factual information that you should be aware of if you are investing in this company so that you have proper expectation. Sean Goodman talked about that working capital imbalance between Q4 and Q1 again in yesterday's call. I'm not going to belabor the point, but suffice to say, it was pre-disclosed to anybody who was listening properly. Let's move on and talk about what they said about free cash flow, though, for the remainder of 2025. This was one of the more bullish comments made on yesterday's call, with the Chief Financial Officer, Sean Goodman, saying that the company anticipates being free cash flow positive for the 9 months ending 12/31/2025. Does that mean that Q2, Q3, and Q4 each are going to be free cash flow positive? I don't know. Q3 is a little bit still up in the air for me, but the totality of all three of them, they are saying is going to be free cash flow positive. Now, we had a pretty horrible number in Q1, so I don't think that the entire year is going to be free cash flow positive, and they did not say that it would be. But the fact that the remaining 9 months is free cash flow positive is a good thing. And let me tell you why I think that. Because that means the company is covering all of its operating costs, including the interest payment. It's covering all of its planned capital expenditures, and then they still have money left over. That means that the company is expecting very good box office, very good revenue, very good income for the remainder of this year. I mean, you can't get much more bullish than that. And that is not me selling you a bunch of hopium. I'm reading the CFO's words, what he said on the call, and explaining them to you in a little bit more simple explanation of what does that exactly mean. All the bills will be paid and the company will have extra money. Does that mean that AMC is all in the clear and there's no more dilution needed? Look, I can't tell you with certainty what the company is going to do because I haven't, for example, seen the proxy statement yet. And I don't know if they plan to push the accelerator on the Go plan. But if we go by what they were telling us yesterday, they are going to be very judicious about spending CapEx and judicious about their remaining liquidity. And they're very optimistic that the company will be free cash flow positive for the remainder of the year. And so, now the next thing I want to see is what's on the proxy statement, because then we will get our eyeballs on what they are thinking strategically. Do they think they want to have some more cash raisability in the bag, even if they don't need to use it? Or are they just going to roll the dice on positive free cash flow for the rest of this year? We'll find that out soon, I think, when we get the proxy statement. I can't tell you right now what the answer is. I know there's a lot of people trying to say they know for sure that there's going to be dilution. I'm going to tell you, I don't know, but it is not a risk that I'm ignoring. It's a possibility. I cannot say that it is a certainty yet, but I want to see that proxy statement because that is my next chance to get a clue about what they're thinking. and I'm sure you guys want to see it as well. Speaking of CapEx and the Go plan, let's try and wrap this video up. I'm going to do a separate video on the Go plan detailing for you guys the investigation I've done over the last 3 or 4 months, because as you know, I was not a big fan when I heard about the Go plan and their plans to spend a bunch of money, when really what we want to see is the debt being paid down and not spend a bunch of money. But I get that there are competitive pressures from the likes of Cinemark, and AMC doesn't want to be left behind. We keep on hearing the companies say that they're not planning to increase CapEx. And if we take them at their word, I was just wondering, okay, then how are you going to pay for all of these capital expenditures, these expansions, these new screens? And I've been doing some digging. So we'll talk about that in another video. Let's just say in this video that my initial fears have been allayed a little bit. I'm not as upset about the Go plan because I understand now that it's not going to be as capital upfront intensive as I had initially feared, and maybe not as bad as some of the worst trolls out there are trying to tell us that it's going to be. I will share some more details about exactly what I mean in the next video. We have covered just about everything on this list except for the last 2 items, and a couple things that I want to say on that. The 2024 annual shareholder meeting, we were notified about that in April of 2024, and the meeting was on June 5th of 2024, if I recall correctly. Typically, those meetings are held every 12 months, so we expected a April proxy for a June 2025 meeting, but we recently got a note from a filing that the company made last week that the annual shareholder meeting in 2025 is going to be at some time in Q3. That means July, August, September. Maybe it'll be in early July and they stay within the technical rules that say it's supposed to be held no later than 13 months from the last one. Maybe it'll be in early July. Maybe it won't. Maybe they'll push it till August or September if they have some other strategic reason that they are delaying that meeting. And maybe that strategic reason has to do with the last bullet item on here, this June bondholder lawsuit. Remember when the company did their debt restructuring in July of 2024, there were a couple of bondholders that lost their collateral due to the collateral being moved over to MovieCo. And they are upset and they are suing the company saying that, hey, you violated a debt covenant. And the company's saying, bro, no, we didn't. And so the court is going to decide. This legal case is going to decide, did AMC default on a bond covenant or not? The company says no. The bondholders say yes. And there is an update on that case in June. Will that case go to trial? Will it be settled as an agreement between the two parties? Maybe AMC pays those bondholders something to make the case go away. Could the delay of the shareholder meeting have something to do with that? I don't know. A couple of things to think about. But whatever is going on with that, I expect we'll find out soon enough when that Form 14A, the proxy statement, comes out and we get to see what all we're voting on. Will the company be asking for more shares? I don't know. Will the company be doing something with preferred? I don't know. Do they need to raise money? They probably need to have the ability to raise money just as a risk mitigation. But if we believe what they say, that they will be free cash flow positive for the remainder of this year, there is no urgent need to dilute to manage liquidity from what I can see. Let's see what is on the proxy statement, and then at least we have a short-term idea of what they're thinking. And for those of you that want to know about risks, the bondholder lawsuit, next court date is in June, late June, and I can't tell you what the outcome is going to be. I don't think that anybody, not the bondholders nor AMC, want to see a default on the bond. They don't want to see the company driven into Chapter 11. And when I'm talking default, I don't mean that the company is not able to pay its interest payments. The plaintiff is alleging that a covenant or an agreement within the bond structure was violated, and that is a evidence of a default. And if they were successful in proving that in court, then they could accelerate the entire bond and say, you owe us the entire amount right now, whatever that amount is, 400 million, 500 million, $1 billion. And AMC clearly doesn't have that kind of money. So they would probably need to do a Chapter 11 if they lost that lawsuit. But that is not a outcome that we really want to think about, but it is a worst case possible outcome. So I'm going to say that the probability of a unfavorable outcome is low, very low, but the possibility exists. And if you're trying to be a reasonable investor, you would not just completely ignore that risk. Be aware of it, and then you can decide how you might want to mitigate any risk. That is up to you. I'm not here to tell you how to think about something. I do want you to at least be aware that it's out there, and we'll cross our fingers and pray to the gods, both old and new, that it is a favorable outcome and everybody walks away happy, including common shareholders. But we'll just have to wait and see. We got about 2 months before we find out the next update on that bondholder lawsuit. But I will not be one of the people that ignores it and refuses to talk to you about it, like the people who only want you to get positive news seem to want to do. It is a potential risk, even if it's a minor one, and you should be aware of it. That's all. In the meantime, while we are waiting to hear about the proxy statement and that June lawsuit update, there are a lot of great movies coming here in the end of May and into June. You know that I'm going to be going to see as many of them as I can, especially with the A-list now giving us up to 4 free movies a week. What a freaking deal. I love it. Let me know what you guys think about the Q1 earnings, what movies you're excited about over the next 8 weeks, the remaining weeks of this quarter. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop them down below. Thank you for watching all the way through. I am Tony Denaro, and I will see you on the next video.